Rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof of the abandoned warehouse, drowning out the sound of the man sobbing on the floor. It was a cold, rhythmic pounding that matched the beating of Kang Seo-jun's heart. Slow. Steady. Dangerous. Seo-jun had just the cuffs of his Italian suit. It cost more than the sobbing man would earn in 10 lifetimes. He looked down, his face completely void of emotion. Please, the man on the floor begged, blood dripping from his lip onto the dusty concrete. Boss, I didn't know it was police money. I swear on my mother's life. Seo-jun sighed. It was a sound of pure boredom. He crouched down, not minding the dirt on his polished shoes. He tilted his head, looking at the traitor with eyes that were blacker than the shadows in the corners of the room. You swear on your mother's life? Seo-jun asked softly. The calmness in his voice was terrifying. That is a mistake, Minho. You should never gamble with the only woman who ever loved you. He stood up and turned his back. He didn't need to see what happened next. He just snapped his fingers. Behind him, there was a muffled thud, then silence. Seo-jun walked toward the exit, checking his watch. It was 11 p.m. His schedule was tight. But before he could reach the black sedan waiting in the rain, his phone buzzed in his breast pocket. He frowned. Only 3 people had this number. One was dead behind him. The other was his head of security. The third was the hospital. He answered immediately. Speak, Mr. Kong. The voice on the other end was trembling so hard it was barely audible. It's Madam Kong. She's having an episode. A bad one. The doctors are evacuating the wing. Seo-jun's hand tightened around the phone. The plastic creaked. The cold killer from the warehouse vanished, replaced instantly by a desperate son. I'm coming, he snarled. If a single scratch ends up on her, I will burn that hospital to the ground with all of you inside. He hung up and slid into the back of the car. The hospital, he ordered the driver. Fast. As the car tore through the rain-slicked streets of Seoul, Seo-jun closed his eyes. He controlled the underworld. He owned half the politicians in the city. But he knew, deep down, that power meant nothing when he couldn't stop his own mother's mind from eating itself alive. The VIP wing of Seoul National Hospital was supposed to be a place of healing and silence. Tonight, it sounded like a war zone. When Seo-jun stepped out of the elevator, he was met with chaos. A nurse ran past him, clutching a bleeding scratch on her cheek. 2 security guards were backing away from room 304 as if a tiger were loose inside. Sir! The head doctor came running up, sweating profusely. Mr. Kong, thank God. We don't know what to do. She shattered a vase. She's armed. Seo-jun pushed past the doctor without a word. He walked to the open door of the suite and froze. His mother, Madam Kong, was huddled in the far corner. She looked so small. Her gray hair was wild, and her eyes were filled with a terror that broke Seo-jun's heart. She held a jagged shard of porcelain in front of her, slashing at the air. Get back. She shrieked, her voice cracking. I see you. You're the shadows. You want to take my son away. Mother, Seo-jun said, stepping into the room. He held his hands up, showing he was unarmed. It's me. It's Seo-jun. Liar. She screamed. She threw a heavy glass coaster at him. It smashed against the wall inches from his head. Seo-jun didn't flinch. My son is a good boy. You smell like blood. You're the devil. Seo-jun stopped. The accusation hit him harder than any physical blow. You smell like blood. She didn't know who he was, but her instincts knew what he was. Doctor, Seo-jun said, his voice straining with suppressed rage. Sedate her. We can't, sir. The doctor whimpered from the hallway. Her heart rate is too high. If we inject her now, it could stop her heart. We have to wait for her to calm down. Wait, though. June roared, spinning around. The sheer volume of his voice made the doctors flinch. Look at her. Does she look like she's calming down? Do your job or I will. Excuse me. The voice was soft, firm, and completely unimpressed. Seo-jun paused. He looked down. Pushing past his bodyguards was a young woman. She looked exhausted. Her nursing uniform was wrinkled. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her badge was flipped backward. She held a plastic tray of cheap convenience store food. You're blocking the hallway, she said, looking up at one of Seo-jun's massive security guards. Move. The guard looked at Seo-jun, confused. Miss, this is a restricted area. You're not assigned to the VIP. I don't care if I'm assigned to the moon, she interrupted. She didn't shout, but her tone was sharp enough to cut glass. I can hear a patient screaming from 3 floors down. Now move or I'll stick you with a catheter. The guard blinked, terrified by the specific threat. He stepped aside. The woman walked straight into the room. She didn't bow to Seo Jun. She didn't even look at him. She walked right past the most dangerous man in Korea as if he were a piece of furniture. Hey. So Jun barked, reaching out to grab her arm. It's dangerous. She has a weapon. The nurse stopped. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Her eyes were brown, steady, and completely fearless. The only dangerous thing in this room, she said calmly, is the testosterone level. You're all screaming and panicking. No wonder she thinks she's being attacked. She pulled her arm free and walked toward Madame Kong. Don't. The head doctor yelled. She'll stab you. Yuna didn't listen. She stopped 5 feet away from the trembling old woman. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't try to take the glass shard. Instead, she sat down on the floor, right in the middle of the broken porcelain. Oh, Jun watched, his breath caught in his throat. What was this girl doing? Yuna opened the plastic lid of her food tray. Steam rose up, the smell of warm porridge. She took a spoon, took a bite herself, and then looked at the old woman. The cafeteria food is terrible today, Yuna said. She spoke casually, like she was talking to a friend at a bus stop. But the pumpkin porridge is okay. It's warm. Madame Kong blinked. She lowered the glass shard an inch. Pea porridge? Yuna hummed. My grandmother used to make it. But she put too much sugar in it. Do you like sugar, madam? Madame Kong stared at her. The wild look in her eyes began to fade, replaced by confusion. I like sugar. Me too, Yuna smiled. It was a genuine warm smile that lit up her tired face. But don't tell the doctors. They say it's bad for the teeth. Yuna shifted slightly, and then she started to hum. It wasn't a random tune. It was Ring, a slow, mournful, beautiful lullaby that every Korean knew in their bones. Jun stood frozen by the door. The sound of her humming cut through the tension in the room like a warm knife through butter. It was soft, imperfect, and incredibly human. Madame Kang's hand shook. The glass shards slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. She took a step toward the nurse. Then another. That song. Madame Kong whispered, tears filling her eyes. My mother sang that. I know, Yuna said softly, still humming. She extended a hand. Come here. The shadows are gone now. It's just us. The old woman collapsed onto the floor, crawling into Yuna's arms. She buried her face in the nurse's shoulder and began to sob, not out of fear, but out of relief. Yuna just held her, stroking her gray hair, rocking her back and forth gently. Jun felt like he had been punched in the gut. He watched the way Yuna's hand moved, gentle, rhythmic, reassuring. He saw a small cut on Yuna's cheek where a piece of flying glass must have grazed her, but she didn't seem to care. She was completely focused on his mother. The silence in the room was heavy. The doctors were stunned into silence. The bodyguards lowered their heads. But Seo Jun couldn't take his eyes off her. For the last 3 months, he had watched the best specialists in the world fail to comfort his mother. And here was this tired, messy girl from the general ward, taming the storm with a spoon of porridge and a song. Yuna waited until Madame Kang's breathing slowed into a sleep rhythm. Then, she gestured to the orderlies. Help me get her to bed, she whispered. Gently. If you wake her up, I'll kill you. The orderlies scrambled to obey. Once the mother was tucked in, Yuna stood up. She groaned slightly, rubbing her lower back. She looked down at her uniform, now stained with porridge and dust. She turned to leave, finally acknowledging Jun standing by the door. She's dehydrated, Yuna said, her voice professional and cold again. Make sure she drinks water when she wakes up. And tell your men to stop standing outside the door like Grim Reapers. It scares her. She started to walk past him. Wait, Seo Jun said. His voice was rougher than he intended. Yuna stopped, but she didn't turn around. I have to get back to my station, sir. My break ended 10 minutes ago. What is your name? Seo Jun asked. Yuna looked over her shoulder. She looked him up and down, taking in the expensive suit, the gold watch, the aura of violence. She didn't look impressed. She looked annoyed. Lee Yuna, she said. And don't worry, I won't charge you for the porridge. She walked out, the heavy doors swinging shut behind her. Jun stood there for a long time. He looked at the empty space where she had been standing. The head doctor cleared his throat nervously, breaking the spell. Mr. Kong, I am so sorry about that. She is a temporary nurse from the charity ward. Incredibly rude. Insubordinate. I will have her file pulled and terminated immediately. She won't be allowed in this building again. So June turned his head slowly to look at the doctor. His eyes were dark, swirling with an emotion that the doctor couldn't read. Terminated? Seo June repeated softly. Yes, sir, the doctor nodded vigorously. She disrespected you. She is the only person in this entire building who actually did her job, Seo June interrupted. His voice was low, deadly quiet. You couldn't handle my mother with all your degrees and drugs. She did it with a song. So June walked over to the window, looking down at the city lights of Seoul below. He could still hear the melody of her humming in his head. It was the first time in hours that the noise in his own mind had gone quiet. He saw his reflection in the glass. He didn't look like the monster his mother feared. He looked like a man who had just found water in a desert. Dr. Seo June said. Yes, sir? Get me her file, so June commanded. A slow, possessive smirk touched the corner of his lips. I want her. If you are enjoying this story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video. It helps us bring more stories like this to life. Now, let's see what happens when the dragon goes hunting. The next night, the rain had stopped, but the air was thick with humidity. Lee Yuna walked out of the hospital staff exit, rolling her shoulders. Her bones ached. Another 12-hour shift. Another day of being yelled at by senior doctors, cleaning up vomit, and dealing with patients who treated her like a servant. She checked her bank account on her phone. She sighed. After paying her student loans and her brother's tuition, she had enough left for maybe 2 cups of instant noodles. Hang in there, Yuna, she muttered to herself, putting the phone away. Just 2 more years. Then you can get a better job. She walked toward the bus stop, keeping her head down. The street was dark. The street lights flickered ominously. She didn't notice the black car trailing her slowly. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, sleek and silent like a panther in the night. It rolled along the curb, matching her walking pace perfectly. Yuna frowned. She sped up. The car sped up. Her heart started to hammer against her ribs. She gripped her bag tighter. She knew this neighborhood wasn't safe, but she couldn't afford a taxi. Was it a drunk driver? A kidnapper? She stopped abruptly and spun around, ready to scream or fight. The car stopped. The back window rolled down with a smooth, electronic hum. Yuna prepared herself to yell, but the words died in her throat. Sitting in the back seat, bathed in the soft orange glow of the street lamp, was the man from the VIP ward. The son of the crazy lady. He looked different tonight. He wasn't wearing a jacket. His dress shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing a hint of a tattoo on his collarbone. He looked relaxed, powerful, and incredibly dangerous. Get in, Sejun said. It wasn't a request. Yuna blinked. Excuse me? Get in the car, Miss Lee, he repeated. He tapped the leather seat beside him. We need to talk. Yuna scoffed. She actually laughed, a sharp sound of disbelief. Look, mister. I don't know who you think you are, but I don't get into cars with strange men, especially ones who stalk me after work. She turned around and kept walking. She heard the car door open. Heavy footsteps clicked on the pavement behind her. Am not a strange man, so June's voice came from right behind her. Am the man who is going to solve all your problems. Yuna spun around. He was close. Too close. She had to tilt her head back to look him in the eye. He smelled like expensive cologne and tobacco. You don't know my problems, Yuna snapped. And unless you're a magical fairy who can erase student debt, leave me alone. Seo Jun smirked. He reached into his pocket. Yuna flinched, thinking he was pulling out a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a piece of paper. He unfolded it and held it up. It was a printout of her bank statement. And next to it, her brother's university acceptance letter. Lee Yuna, so June read calmly. Debt, 50 million won. Rent is overdue. And your brother, Min Hyuk. Smart kid. Got into Seoul National University. But you can't afford the tuition, can you? Yuna felt the blood drain from her face. Fear turned into cold anger. She snatched the paper from his hand. How did you get this? She hissed. This is illegal. I'll call the police. Seo Jun laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. I own the police, Yuna. And the bank. And the hospital you work for. He took a step closer, boxing her in against the brick wall of a convenience store. He wasn't touching her, but his presence was overwhelming. I have a proposition, Seo Jun said, his voice dropping to a whisper. My mother hasn't eaten since you left. She screams if anyone else comes near her. She only wants you. Yuna stared at him, her chest heaving. So, hire a therapist. I don't want a therapist, Seo Jun said intensely. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. I want you. I want you to be her private nurse. Live in. 24 hours a day. No, Yuna said immediately. am not living with a gangster. It'll pay off your debt, June countered. All of it. Tonight. Yuna hesitated. The debt was a chain around her neck that she had been dragging for years. Freedom was staring her in the face. But looking at Seo Jun's dark, obsessive eyes, she knew that this freedom would come with a different kind of chain. I have a life, Yuna whispered, her resolve weakening. I can't just belong to you. Seo Jun's eyes darkened. He placed a hand on the wall beside her head. Everyone has a price, Yuna, he murmured. Tell me yours. Or do I have to make sure your brother's scholarship gets? Lost in the mail? Yuna gasped. She looked at him with pure hatred. You wouldn't. Try me. They stared at each other for a long moment. The air between them crackled with tension. It was hate, yes, but it was also something else. A challenge. Finally, Yuna looked away. She knew she was beaten. She couldn't risk her brother's future. Fine, she whispered. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Though June pulled back, looking satisfied. Name them. I answer to the patient, Yuna said firmly, poking him in the chest with her finger. Not to you. And if you ever threaten my family again, I will sedate you with enough horse tranquilizer to keep you asleep for a decade. Do you understand? So June looked down at her finger on his chest. No one touched him. No one threatened him. He smiled. A genuine, terrifying smile. Deal, he said. Get in the car, Nurse Lee. We're going home. As Yuna walked toward the black limousine, she felt a shiver run down her spine. She wasn't just taking a job. She was walking into the dragon's den. And she had a feeling that the dragon had no intention of ever letting her go. The silence inside the Rolls-Royce was heavier than the humid air outside. The windows were tinted so dark that the city of Seoul looked like a blur of gray shadows passing by. Yuna sat as far away from Kangso June as possible, pressing her shoulder against the car door. She clutched her cheap canvas bag like a shield. Every time the car went over a bump, her knee brushed against his expensive suit trousers, and she flinched as if she had touched a hot stove. June didn't look at her. He was typing on his phone, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the screen. Stop fidgeting, Seo June said, without looking up. His voice was calm, but it filled the small space instantly. You're making the leather squeak. I'm not fidgeting, Yuna snapped back, though she stopped moving immediately. I'm wondering where you are taking me. You said home, but men like you usually mean a dungeon or a warehouse. Seo June finally locked his phone and slid it into his pocket. He turned his head slowly to look at her. In the dim light, his eyes looked like obsidian, hard, sharp, and impossible to read. Men like me? Seo June repeated. A small, amused smirk played on his lips. And what exactly do you think men like me do, Nurse Lee? You hurt people, Yuna said bluntly. She didn't back down. You use money to control everything. And you kidnap nurses because you're too emotionally stunted to deal with your own family problems. The driver in the front seat choked on a cough, clearly terrified by her audacity. No one spoke to the boss like that. But Seo June didn't get angry. He leaned back, resting his head against the seat, studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't solved yet. You have a sharp tongue, Seo June murmured. Be careful. In my world, sharp things get broken. In my world, Yuna countered, we use sharp things to save lives. It's called surgery. Maybe you should try it sometime. You might find a heart in there. The car slowed down. They pulled up to the gates of a massive high-rise building in the Gangnam district. It wasn't just an apartment complex. It was a fortress. The Black Tower. Armed guards opened the heavy iron gates. The car glided into a private underground garage that was cleaner than most hospital operating rooms. We're here, Seo June said. Welcome to your new cage. He opened the door and stepped out. Yuna hesitated for a second, taking a deep breath to steady her shaking hands, then followed him. They took a private elevator that had no buttons, only a fingerprint scanner. As they shot up 60 floors in seconds, Yuna's ears popped. The doors slid open, revealing the penthouse. It was breathtaking, and it was completely dead. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire glittering city of Seoul, but the room felt like a mausoleum. Everything was black marble, gray steel, or white leather. There were no photos, no plants, no color. It was freezing cold. Your room is down the hall to the left, Seo June said, walking toward a wet bar to pour himself a drink. My mother is in the master suite on the right. Do not enter my office. Do not leave the building without an escort. Do not order takeout food. Yuna looked around the empty, expensive wasteland. Do not breathe. Do not blink, she muttered under her breath. I heard that, Seo June said, taking a sip of whiskey. Go check on her. She's been asking for this singing girl all day. Yuna rolled her eyes at the nickname but marched toward the master suite. This was why she was here. Not for him. For the patient. She opened the door to the mother's room, and her heart softened instantly. Madame Kong was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, staring blankly at the rain. She looked frilier than she had in the hospital. Her hands were shaking in her lap. Madame? Yuna called out softly. The old woman turned. Her eyes were cloudy, confused. But then recognition flickered. Porridge, Madame Kong whispered. Yuna smiled, a genuine warmth flooding her chest. She walked over and knelt beside the wheelchair. That's right. In the porridge girl. Yuna. Yuna, Madame Kong repeated, testing the name on her tongue. She reached out and grabbed Yuna's hand with a desperate strength. Don't let the shadows in ya. They wait in the hallway. They have guns. Yuna looked at the door. She knew the shadows were Seo Jun's bodyguards. I won't let them in, Yuna promised. I'm here now. I'm going to stay right here. For the next 2 hours, Yuna worked. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a force of nature. She bathed the old woman, changed her into comfortable pajamas, and checked her vitals. She realized the expensive medical equipment in the room was unplugged or dusty. The previous nurses had been too scared to actually use it. Yuna set everything up efficiently. By midnight, Madame Kong was sleeping peacefully, holding onto Yuna's sleeve. Yuna gently untangled herself and walked out into the main living room. She was starving. She found the kitchen. It was huge, sleek, and looked like it had never been used. She opened the refrigerator. It was filled with nothing but rows of bottled water, expensive champagne, and empty space. Unbelievable, Yuna groaned. Rich people really do live on air and ego. She rummaged through the pantry and found a dusty bag of rice and some dried seaweed. It wasn't much, but she could work with it. 20 minutes later, the smell of Mayak Guk warm seaweed soup began to fill the cold, sterile penthouse. It was a smell of comfort, of birthdays, of home. Seo Jun had been in his office, reviewing hit lists and profit margins. But the smell distracted him. He frowned. He hadn't smelled actual food in this house in years. His chefs usually prepared intricate French meals that tasted like nothing. He walked out into the living room, following the scent. He stopped at the kitchen island. Yuna was standing by the stove, stirring a pot. She had taken off her nurse's jacket and was wearing a simple white t-shirt. Her hair was falling out of its bun. She was humming that song again. So Jun leaned against the marble doorframe, crossing his arms. He watched her. He was used to women who wore silk dresses and heavy perfume, women who laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. Yuna looked like a mess. She smelled like antiseptic and sesame oil. And he couldn't look away. I told you not to order takeout, Seo Jun said. Yuna jumped, nearly dropping the ladle. She spun around, hand over her heart. God, do you wear bells? You walk like a ghost. It's my house, so Jun said, walking closer. I can walk how I want. What are you doing? Cooking, Yuna said, turning back to the pot. Your mother needs nutrients, not just 4 fluids. And your fridge is a disgrace, by the way. Do you are a vampire? Who drinks that much sparkling water? Seo Jun stopped next to her. He looked into the pot. Seaweed soup. It's for birthdays. It's for healing, Yuna corrected him. She dipped a spoon into the soup and blew on it. Without thinking, she held it up to his mouth. Taste it. Tell me if it's too salty. So Jun froze. He stared at the spoon. He stared at her face. No one fed the dragon. No one dared to put a utensil near his face unless they wanted to lose a hand. I'm not your patient, so Jun said coldly. Just taste it, Yuna insisted, waving the spoon impatiently. I don't want to poison your mother. Seo Jun hesitated. Then slowly he leaned forward and took a sip. The flavor exploded in his mouth. Savory, warm, rich. It tasted exactly like the soup his mother used to make before his father was murdered. Before the blood. Before the money. He swallowed hard. He looked at Yuna, and for a split second, the mask of the Mafia boss cracked. His eyes widened with a flash of vulnerability. Well? Yuna asked. Too salty? It's adequate, Seo Jun muttered, pulling back and composing himself. Feed her, then go to sleep. You start at 6 a.m. He turned and walked away quickly, retreating to the darkness of his office. He needed a drink. He needed to forget the way her eyes looked when she offered him that spoon. Yuna watched him go, shaking her head. Adequate, she scoffed. Jerk. It's delicious. The dragon has tasted the soup, but can he handle the heat? If you're loving the chemistry between Seo Jun and Yuna, take a second to smash that like button. Comment Team Yuna if you think she's going to win this war. Now, let's see what happens when the lights go out. The penthouse was silent. It was 3 a.m. The city lights outside cast long, skeletal shadows across the floor. Yuna was asleep in the guest room, exhausted from the day. But Seo Jun was awake. He was in his bedroom, tossing and turning. His sheets were soaked with cold sweat. He was trapped in the nightmare, the same one he had every night for 15 years. Flashback. A dark alley. Gunshots. His father falling. The blood pooling on the asphalt. A young Seo Jun standing there, helpless, watching the life drain from the only man he respected. No. Seo Jun mumbled in his sleep, his hands gripping the sheets until his knuckles turned white. Dad. Run. The dream shifted. Now it wasn't his father. It was his mother. She was screaming, blaming him. You smell like blood, Seo Jun. You are the devil. Stop. Seo Jun shouted, bolting upright in bed. He gasped for air, his chest heaving. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked around the dark room, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun he kept on the nightstand. He gripped the cold metal of the pistol. It was the only thing that made him feel safe. He sat there for a moment, trembling. The panic attack was bad tonight. He needed water. So Jun got out of bed, wearing only his silk pajama pants. His chest and arms were covered in scars, bullet wounds, knife slashes, memories of a violent life. He walked out into the hallway, gun in hand, moving silently toward the kitchen. He turned the corner and stopped dead. Someone was in the kitchen. So Jun raised the gun instantly, his training taking over. Freeze. The figure at the counter turned around slowly. It was Yuna. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt that hung down to her knees. She held a glass of warm milk in her hands. She blinked at him, then looked down at the gun pointed at her chest. She didn't scream. She didn't drop the glass. Put that away, Yuna whispered. You'll wake your mother. Though Jun lowered the weapon slowly, feeling like an idiot. What are you doing up? I heard you, Yuna said. She walked toward him. You were shouting in your sleep. Seo Jun stepped back. He didn't want her to see him like this. Sweating, shaking, half naked, vulnerable. Go back to bed, Nurse Lee. I'm fine. You're not fine, Yuna said. She walked right up to him. She was so small compared to him, but she radiated a strange calmness. Your pupils are dilated. You're hyperventilating. It's a panic attack. I said I'm fine, so Jun snarled, trying to be the boss again. Don't analyze me. Yuna ignored his order. She reached out and gently took the gun from his hand, though Jun was so shocked he let her take it. She placed the deadly weapon on the kitchen counter, far away from him. Then she handed him the glass of warm milk. Drink, she commanded. Jun stared at the milk. I am 30 years old. I don't drink warm milk. It has tryptophan, Yuna explained. It helps with serotonin levels. Drink it, or you'll get the nasogastric tube. Though Jun let out a short, incredulous breath. He took the glass. He drank it in one go. The warmth spread through his chest, settling the shaking in his hands. He looked at Yuna. In the moonlight, she looked soft. Beautiful. Why aren't you afraid of me? Seo Jun asked quietly. I just pointed a gun at you. Yuna leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. She looked tired but sad. I worked in the ER for 3 years, Seo Jun, she said. She used his name without the honorifics. It sounded intimate. I've seen gang members come in with their intestines hanging out. I've seen mothers screaming over dead children. I've seen people die alone. She looked up at him, her eyes locking onto his. I'm afraid of death, Yuna whispered. I'm afraid of losing the people I love. But you? You're just a man in his pajamas who misses his dad. Seo Jun felt the air leave his lungs. How did she know? How could she see right through the expensive suits and the violence to the broken boy inside? He took a step closer to her. He couldn't help it. He was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. You think you know me? Seo Jun murmured. He was so close now that he could smell her shampoo, lavender and rain. I know you're lonely, Yuna whispered. She didn't back away. Seo Jun reached out. His hand, rough and scarred, brushed against her cheek. His thumb traced her jawline. His skin was burning. Yuna's breath hitched. She looked at his lips, then up at his eyes. The tension in the kitchen was thick enough to choke on. Yuna, Seo Jun breathed. He leaned down. His face was inches from hers. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to consume her. He wanted to know if she tasted as warm as she felt. Ring. The shrill sound of a phone cut through the silence like a gunshot. So June froze. Yuna flinched and stepped back, breaking the spell. So June closed his eyes and cursed under his breath. He grabbed his phone from the counter. It was his head of security. What? So June answered, his voice ice cold again. Boss, the voice said urgently. We have a problem. The Vipers. They know where she is. They know about the penthouse. So June's eyes snapped open. He looked at Yuna, who was standing there, confused and flushed. The vulnerability vanished. The dragon was back. Double the guards, so June ordered. And get the car ready. I'm going out. He hung up and looked at Yuna. Go to your room. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. What's happening? Yuna asked, fear creeping into her voice. Go. So June shouted. Yuna turned and ran to her room. So June watched her go, his heart pounding. But this time, it wasn't from a nightmare. It was from fear. Real fear. Because for the first time in his life, Kong Seo Jun had something to lose. And his enemies were coming to take it. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, but it brought no warmth. The air inside the black tower was suffocating. So June had been gone for 12 hours. Yuna paced the living room, her nurse's shoes squeaking softly on the marble. Every time she looked at the heavy steel front door, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The security guards outside were edgy. She could hear them murmuring into their radios, their hands hovering near their holsters. Yuna, a soft voice called out. Yuna turned. Madame Kong was sitting in her wheelchair, holding a ball of yarn. She looked clearer today. The dementia fog had lifted slightly. Yes, madam? Yuna asked, kneeling beside her. Do you need water? He isn't coming back for dinner, is he? Madame Kong asked. Her eyes were sad. My son. He's out there doing the bad things. Yuna sighed and took the old woman's hand. He's working, madam. He's making sure we're safe. Safe? Madame Kong laughed bitterly. No one is safe around us, child. You should leave. Run away before the blood splatters on you two. Yuna opened her mouth to argue, to say she was fine, but the lights suddenly flickered. Then, they died completely. The penthouse plunged into gray silence. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The electronic locks on the windows beeped once, a low, dying sound. What happened? Madame Kong whispered, gripping Yuna's hand so hard her nails dug in. Just a power outage, Yuna said, keeping her voice steady, though her heart had leaped into her throat. Stay here. Yuna stood up and walked to the intercom on the wall. She pressed the button. Security? The power is out. Is everything okay? Static. Then a wet, gurgling sound. Yuna froze. That wasn't a technical glitch. She knew that sound from the ER. That was the sound of a man trying to breathe through a punctured lung. They're here. The realization hit her like a bucket of ice water. The Vipers. The threat Seo Jun had warned her about. Yuna. Madame Kong whimpered. The shadows. I hear them. Heavy boots thudded in the hallway outside the penthouse door. Not the rhythmic march of Seo Jun's guards, but the chaotic, stomping run of intruders. Yuna didn't scream. She didn't panic. Her medical training took over. In an emergency, you don't think about fear. You think about the procedure. Step 1. Secure the patient. Madam, listen to me, Yuna said, rushing back to the wheelchair. She unlocked the brakes. We're going to play a game. Hide and seek. You have to be very quiet. Can you do that? The old woman nodded, her eyes wide with terror. Yuna wheeled her swiftly into the master bedroom. She scanned the room. The walk-in closet. It had a heavy door and no windows. She pushed Madame Kong inside. Don't come out, Yuna whispered, kissing the old woman's forehead. No matter what you hear. Do not open this door unless you hear my voice. Or Seo Jun's. What about you? Madame Kong cried. I'm going to distract them, Yuna said. She closed the closet door and locked it from the outside. It was a flimsy lock, but it might buy them time. Yuna ran back into the bedroom. She needed a weapon. She looked around desperately. A lamp? Too heavy. A pillow? Useless. Her eyes landed on the medical cart she had organized the night before. She grabbed a scalpel, a small, surgical blade she used for cutting bandages. It was tiny against a gun, but it was sharp. She also grabbed a bottle of isopropyl alcohol and a lighter she found in Seo Jun's drawer. Boom. The front door of the penthouse exploded inward. Debris flew across the living room. Yuna ducked behind the kitchen island, covering her ears. 3 men walked in through the smoke. They wore cheap suits and masks. They held submachine guns. Check the rooms. One of them shouted. His voice was rough. Find the old witch. The boss wants her alive. Kill anyone else. Yuna pressed her hand over her mouth to stifle her breathing. She could hear them tearing apart the living room, smashing vases, overturning furniture. They were getting closer to the bedroom. If they found the closet, Madame Kong was dead. Or worse, she would be used as bait. Yuna looked at the alcohol bottle in her hand. She looked at the lighter. She knew she couldn't fight 3 armed men, but she could create chaos. She stood up. Hey! Yuna screamed. The 3 men spun around, guns raised. They saw a small woman in a nurse's uniform standing in the kitchen doorway. Well, the leader sneered, lowering his gun slightly. Look what we have here. The nurse. You're prettier than the pictures. Get out, Yuna said. Her voice shook, but her chin was high. This is a sterile environment. The men laughed. They started walking toward her. Or what? You gonna check my blood pressure, sweetheart? Yuna flicked the lighter. No, she said. She threw the open bottle of alcohol at the leader's chest. Before he could react, she tossed the lit lighter. Whoosh. The alcohol ignited instantly. The leader screamed as blue flames engulfed his shirt. He dropped his gun, flailing wildly. Fire! Put it out! He shrieked. The other 2 men panicked, trying to pat out the flames on their boss. Yuna didn't wait. She turned and sprinted back toward the bedroom, slamming the door and locking it. She dragged a heavy dresser in front of it. It wouldn't hold them for long. She knew that. But every second counted. She huddled against the dresser, clutching the scalpel in her trembling hand. She could hear them cursing outside. She could hear them kicking the door. Thud. 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 Open up, you little rat. The voice roared from the other side. I'm going to kill you slowly. Yuna closed her eyes. Tears leaked out. Oh, June, she whispered. Where are you? The tension is at an all-time high. Yuna is fighting for her life. If your heart is racing, hit that like button right now. Do you think Seo Jun will make it in time? Let's find out. 5 miles away, a black Mercedes was tearing down the highway at 140 miles per hour. Kong Seo Jun drove like a man possessed. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He was weaving through traffic, ignoring red lights, ignoring honking horns. His phone was on speaker on the dashboard. It was connected to the penthouse security feed. Sir, his head of security's voice crackled. The cameras are down. We lost visual. The perimeter team is dead. I don't care about the cameras. Seo Jun roared. Where is she? Is she alive? Thermal sensors show a fire in the kitchen. Multiple heat signatures in the hallway. Sir, they're inside. Seo Jun let out a guttural growl. He slammed his foot on the accelerator. The engine screamed. He had spent his whole life building walls to keep people out. He had pushed everyone away to keep them safe. And now, the one time he let someone in, the one time he let a woman with gentle hands and a sharp tongue into his home, she was going to die because of him. If they touch her, June thought, a dark, cold rage settling over him. I will kill every single person in this city. He drifted the car around the corner, screeching into the underground garage of the Black Tower. He didn't wait for the car to stop completely. He kicked the door open and rolled out, his gun already in his hand. He didn't take the elevator. They would have rigged it. He took the stairs. 60 floors. He ran up the first flight, his lungs burning, his legs pumping with adrenaline. On the 10th floor, he found 2 of his guards dead. On the 30th floor, he found a Viper sentry. So June didn't slow down. He fired 2 shots. Bang. Bang. The sentry fell before he could even raise his radio. Seo Jun kept running. He was a monster climbing a tower to save his princess. But he wasn't doing it for love. He was doing it for possession. She was his. And no one took what belonged to the dragon. By the time he reached the penthouse floor, his suit was drenched in sweat, and his eyes were wild. He kicked open the service door. Smoke filled the hallway. The smell of burning alcohol and ozone stung his nose. He heard screaming from inside the penthouse. A woman's scream. Yuna! Seo Jun bellowed. He charged through the shattered front door. The living room was a wreck. One man was writhing on the floor with burns. Another was kicking at the bedroom door. So Jun didn't hesitate. He raised his gun. Headshot. The man kicking the door dropped instantly. The burned man on the floor tried to reach for his weapon. So Jun stepped on his wrist, hearing the bone snap. He didn't even look down. He put a bullet in the man's leg to keep him down. Where's the third one? So Jun snarled. Crush. The sound came from inside the bedroom. The wood splintered. The third intruder had broken through. So Jun felt his heart stop. He leaped over the furniture and sprinted into the bedroom. The scene he saw froze him for a microsecond. The intruder, a massive man with a knife, had cornered Yuna. She had backed up against the closet door, shielding it with her own body. She held the tiny scalpel in front of her, her hand shaking violently, but she didn't move. She was guarding his mother. The intruder lunged. No. So June screamed. He tackled the man from behind. The momentum sent them both crashing into the vanity mirror. Glass shattered everywhere. The intruder was strong, but Seo Jun was desperate. He punched the man in the face, feeling cartilage crack. The man slashed out with his knife, cutting a deep gash into Seo Jun's forearm. Jun didn't feel it. He grabbed the man's throat with both hands and squeezed. He squeezed with all the rage, fear, and guilt that had been building up for years. You touched her, Jun hissed, staring into the man's bulging eyes. You touched what is mine. The man gurgled, thrashing, but Seo Jun's grip was iron. He didn't let go until the man went limp. Then he held on for another 10 seconds, just to be sure. Seo Jun stood up, panting heavily. Blood dripped from his arm onto the white carpet. He kicked the body away and turned around. Yuna, he gasped. Yuna was still standing by the closet door. She had slid down to the floor, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was still holding the scalpel, her knuckles white. She was staring at the dead man, her eyes wide and vacant. Shock. Seo Jun walked over to her slowly. He holstered his gun. He held up his bloody hands to show he wasn't a threat. Yuna, he said softly. It's me. Look at me. Yuna blinked. She looked up. When she saw Seo Jun bruised, bleeding, and alive, the dam broke. She dropped the scalpel. You came back, she whispered, her voice cracking. Seo Jun fell to his knees in front of her. He didn't care about the blood. He grabbed her face in his hands, checking her frantically. Did they hurt you? He demanded, his voice trembling. Tell me, did they touch you? I burned him. Yuna stammered, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. I threw the alcohol. I didn't mean to. Seo Jun pulled her into his chest. He buried his face in her neck, breathing in the smell of smoke and fear. You did good. You did so good. He held her tight, rocking her slightly. He could feel her heart beating against his. It was the only sound in the world that mattered. My mother? Seo Jun asked, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. Closet, Yuna choked out. She's safe. I locked her in. Seo Jun closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. Most people would have run. Most people would have saved themselves. Yuna had stood between 3 armed killers and a senile old woman, armed with nothing but a lighter and a scalpel. He looked at her. Really looked at her. He brushed a strand of hair out of her face, smearing a little blood on her cheek. He wiped it away with his thumb, his touch surprisingly gentle. You are insane, Seo Jun whispered. There was awe in his voice. You are completely insane. I'm a nurse. Yuna managed a weak, watery smile. We don't lose patience. Seo Jun let out a short, breathless laugh. He leaned his forehead against hers. Let's get you out of here, he said. He stood up and scooped her into his arms bridal style. Yuna gasped, wrapping her arms around his neck. I can walk, she protested weakly. Not today, Seo Jun said. Today, you don't do anything. He carried her out of the ruined bedroom, stepping over the bodies of the men who had tried to take her from him. As they walked into the hallway, his security team, the backup unit, finally swarmed in. They stopped when they saw the boss carrying the nurse. They saw the blood on his suit, the darkness in his eyes. Clean this up, Seo Jun ordered coldly, not stopping. And find out who sent them. I want every single Viper dead by sunrise. Yes, sir. The men shouted in unison. Seo Jun carried Yuna into the elevator. The doors closed, shutting out the carnage. In the quiet of the elevator, Yuna looked at Seo Jun's arm. The cut was deep and bleeding badly. Put me down, Yuna said firmly. No. You're bleeding, she said, her nurse voice returning. You nicked the radial artery. If you don't apply pressure, you'll pass out. Seo Jun looked down at her. I'm fine. Put me down. Seo Jun sighed and set her down gently. Yuna immediately grabbed his arm. She ripped a strip of fabric from her ruined uniform and tied it tight around his wound. You're an idiot, she muttered, her hands working fast. Running into a gunfight. I was running to you, Seo Jun said simply. Yuna stopped. She looked up at him. The elevator arrived at the lobby, but neither of them moved. Why? Yuna asked softly. I'm just an employee. Seo Jun reached out with his good hand. He cupped her cheek, tilting her head up. You're not an employee, he said. His voice was low, rough, and full of a terrifying certainty. You are the only thing in this world I am afraid to lose. Yuna's breath hitched. She saw the truth in his eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. It was obsession. It was love, twisted and dark and heavy. And God help her. She didn't pull away. Comes, June said, taking her hand. We need to stitch this up. He led her out of the elevator, into the night. The war had started. But as Yuna walked beside the dragon, holding his bloody hand, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't afraid of the fire anymore. She was starting to like the heat. The safe house was not a house. It was a fortress buried deep in the mountains of Gangwon-do, surrounded by miles of pine forest and electric fencing. The rain had returned, lashing against the windows of the armored SUV as it pulled into the gravel driveway. The silence inside the car was deafening. Yuna sat in the back seat, holding Madame Kang's hand. The old woman had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by the terror of the night. Yuna looked out at the dark trees passing by. Her uniform was ruined, torn, stained with soot, smelling of smoke and the metallic tang of blood. But she didn't feel cold. She felt a strange, burning heat radiating from the man sitting next to her. So June stared straight ahead. His face was a mask of stone. He hadn't spoken a word since the elevator. His arm was wrapped in the makeshift bandage Yuna had tied, but blood was still seeping through, staining his white shirt sleeve crimson. We're here, the driver announced, his voice tight. The car stopped. Guards swarmed the vehicle, opening the doors with military precision. Take my mother to the guest wing, Ho Jun ordered as he stepped out into the rain. Get the private medical team to check her. If she wakes up, tell her. Tell her I'm sorry. Yes, boss. 2 guards gently helped Madame Kang into a wheelchair and rushed her inside. So June turned to Yuna. Raindrops clung to his eyelashes, softening the harsh lines of his face. He looked like a fallen angel. Beautiful, dangerous, and in pain. Come, he said. The doctor is waiting for you. I don't need a doctor, Yuna said, her voice hoarse from the smoke. I'm fine. But you need stitches. I have a doctor for that, Seo Jun said dismissively. He turned and walked toward the heavy oak doors of the safe house. Yuna watched him walk away. She saw the slight stumble in his step. The blood loss was getting to him. Stubborn idiot, she muttered. She ran after him, grabbing his good arm. I said I'm fine. I'm doing the stitching. So June stopped. He looked down at her hand on his arm. Yuna, you've been through a trauma. You need rest. I am a nurse, Yuna said, looking him dead in the eye. Her hair was plastered to her face by the rain, but her gaze was fierce. I don't rest when there is an open wound. Now get inside and sit down before you pass out and I have to drag you. So June stared at her for a long second. Then, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. It was a tired, broken smile. As you wish, he whispered. The medical room in the safe house was better equipped than most city clinics. It smelled of antiseptic and lemon. Seo Jun sat on the edge of the examination table, shirtless. Yuna stood between his legs, threading a surgical needle. Her hands were scrubbed clean, her movements precise. She tried not to look at his chest, at the map of scars that told the story of his violent life. There were knife marks, bullet grazes, and burns. She focused on the fresh wound on his forearm. It was deep but clean. This is going to hurt, Yuna said softly. I don't have lidocaine here. I don't need it, Seo Jun grunted. He didn't look at the wound. He looked at her. Yuna pushed the needle through the skin. Jun didn't flinch. His muscle twitched slightly under her fingers, but he didn't make a sound. You have too many scars, Yuna whispered, pulling the thread tight. Hazards of the trade, Seo Jun replied. His voice was low, vibrating in his chest. Each one is a lesson. And this one? Yuna asked, nodding at the fresh cut. What lesson is this? Seo Jun went quiet. He watched her fingers work. Gentle, healing, efficient. That one, so Jun said slowly, is a reminder. That I was too slow. Yuna paused. She looked up. You saved us, Seo Jun. You weren't slow. I was almost too late, he said darkly. His eyes hardened. If I had arrived 1 minute later, that man, he would have. His hand clenched into a fist, blood pumping faster. Stop, Yuna commanded gently. She placed her hand over his fist, uncurling his fingers one by one. He didn't. I'm here. Your mother is safe. Look at me. Seo Jun looked at her. The rage in his eyes swirled with guilt. I brought this to you, he whispered. The vipers. They came because of me. Because I wanted you. I dragged you into my world, and it almost killed you. Yuna finished the last stitch. She tied the knot and snipped the thread. She bandaged the arm efficiently. Then she stepped back. She looked at the man who terrified the entire city. You didn't drag me, Eunice said firmly. I chose to get in the car. I chose to stay. You did it for the money, Seo Jun said bitterly. For your brother. At first, yes, Yuna admitted. She picked up a damp cloth and stepped closer to him. She began to wipe the dried blood from his chest. But tonight, in that closet, I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about your mother. And I was thinking about you. So Jun's breath hitched as she wiped the soot from his collarbone. Me? He choked out. I was wondering if you were eating, Yuna murmured, her hand lingering over his heart. I was wondering if you were having another nightmare. I was scared that you would come home to a house full of ghosts. Seo, Jun grabbed her wrist. His grip was desperate. Yuna, he groaned. He pulled her closer. She stumbled, landing between his legs again, her hands resting on his bare shoulders. The air in the room became heavy, charged with electricity. I am a bad man, Seo, Jun whispered, his face inches from hers. I kill people who get in my way. I destroy things. I am darkness, Yuna. You are light. You fix things. Then let me fix you, Yuna breathed. So Jun closed his eyes, fighting a war within himself. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to claim her. But he knew that if he did, he would never be able to let her go. And being with him meant a target on her back forever. He pulled away abruptly. He stood up, turning his back to her. Go to sleep, he said coldly. The guest room is down the hall. Yuna stood there, stunned by the sudden rejection. Seo Jun? Leave, he barked. Get out. Yuna flinched. The wall was back up. The dragon had retreated into his cave. She grabbed her tray of instruments, her hands shaking. Fine. Change your own bandages tomorrow. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door. So Jun stood alone in the silence. He looked down at his bandaged arm. He brought his hand up to his face, inhaling the scent of her. Lavender and rain. I'm sorry, he whispered to the empty room. But I have to let you go. It feels like heartbreak, doesn't it? If you've ever had to push someone away to protect them, you know exactly how Seo Jun feels right now. Leave a comment below with a broken heart emoji broken heart if you think he's making a mistake. Don't forget to subscribe because the ending is coming up and you won't want to miss it. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The mountains were shrouded in mist. Yuna woke up in a strange bed. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories of the fire and the fight came rushing back. She sat up. On the bedside table, there was a neat stack of clothes, jeans, a sweater, and fresh sneakers. And an envelope. Yuna frowned. She picked up the envelope. It was thick. She opened it. Inside was a check. A check for 500 million won. Enough to pay her debt, her brother's tuition, and buy a house. And a plane ticket. One way. To Paris. Leaving in 3 hours. That bastard, Yuna hissed. She threw the covers off and dressed in record time. She grabbed the envelope and marched out of the room. She found him on the terrace. Jun was standing by the railing, smoking a cigarette. He was wearing a fresh black suit, looking impeccable, as if the night before had never happened. He heard her coming but didn't turn around. The car is waiting, Seo Jun said, exhaling a plume of smoke into the mist. It will take you to Incheon Airport. Your brother's tuition is already paid in full. You are free, Yuna. Yuna walked up to him. She didn't say a word. She took the check and the plane ticket. She held them up in front of his face. Then she ripped them in half. Rip. Seo Jun turned his head sharply. He watched as she tore the paper into confetti and threw it over the railing. The pieces fluttered down into the forest below like snow. What are you doing? Jun asked, his voice low and dangerous. That was your freedom. I define my own freedom, Yuna snapped. She crossed her arms. You don't get to fire me, Kang Seo Jun. I have a contract. The contract is void, Jun growled. He threw his cigarette down and stepped closer to her. Don't you understand? They know who you are now. The Vipers. The Triads. Everyone. As long as you are near me, you are a target. So protect me, Yuna challenged him. She stepped closer, invading his personal space. You're the Dragon of Soul, aren't you? Are you telling me you're too weak to keep one nurse safe? Seo Jun's eyes flashed with anger. Weak? I am trying to save your life. Go to Paris. Find a nice doctor. Get married. Have kids who don't know what a gunshot sounds like. I don't want a nice doctor. Yuna shouted. Tears pricked her eyes. I want the man who drinks warm milk in the middle of the night. I want the man who ran up 60 flights of stairs to save me. I want you, you idiot. The silence that followed was absolute. The birds stopped singing. The wind stopped blowing. Seo Jun stared at her. His mask crumbled completely. You. He started, his voice cracking. You want me? Yes, Yuna whispered. She reached out and took his hand, the one with the fresh stitches. I'm not afraid of the fire, Ojin. I'm afraid of the cold. And that house. Without you. It's just cold. So June let out a ragged breath. He looked at her like she was a miracle. I will ruin you, he warned. It was a last, desperate attempt to save her. I am selfish. I am possessive. If you stay, I will never let you leave again.